It means to be in balance. I think that if you want to be successful, you have to be prepared to work hard and you have to be prepared to sacrifice. But you don't have to let it consume you, and you don't have to be imbalanced.
This is the Adventure Sports Podcast, where we hear stories of adventure from every corner of the planet. We interview all sorts of folks who are using their sport to explore the world around them and give you the inspiration you need to get out there and have some fun. Hey folks, hope you're doing well. Like I said in the last episode, the audio might be a little off right now while I'm figuring out, where I'm going to be recording in this new house. So we just moved cross country. So, things are crazy right now, and we're also immediately remodeling. So it's kind of a wild construction zone in here. But anyway, it's super late tonight. I'm recording this intro, and today's episode is kind of a stretch for us. It comes from my other show called Without Compromise, which is through Athletic Brewing. Feel free to check that out. But anytime there's a good guest on there that would make a good episode for this show, I plug it in on a Thursday, because typically Thursdays are Throwback Thursday episodes. And so Rachael Rapinoe, that name might ring a bell because her sister Megan Rapinoe was on the U.S. Olympic women's team when they won gold a few years ago, and so really well-known name. And Rachael it just kind of talks about them growing up, how she started falling off with injuries while her sister continued to kind of grow in the sport. And so Rachael became pretty passionate about recovery, as you'll hear, and just it has a lot of cool things to share, a lot of leadership lessons, a lot of stuff around just recovery for sports. So it is a little stretch for this show, but I thought it was a really cool interview, a really good listen, and not a huge time commitment, since so many of y'all might be going somewhere for the weekend or planning something with your family. We didn't want a super long episode for today. So I hope you enjoy. Kind of like I said, not typical for us to have this sort of interview, but thought it'd be a cool listen. So anyway, we'll be back Monday with a brand new episode, and hopefully I'll start getting back into the swing of things, get some of this rust off, trying to get back in front of the mic. All right, talk soon. All right, folks, welcome to today's show. We've got awesome guests. I'm excited to learn more about her story. There's a lot I don't know, so I'll be learning along with you. But Rachael Rapinoe, welcome to Without Compromise.
Thank you, Mason, for having me. I'm excited to share a little bit about who I am and my story with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I always ask this first. Where are you being, holing up for quarantine right now? Where's home for you, and what are you doing?
Home for me is Portland, Oregon. I've lived here on and off for approaching 15 years, which is scary because that just means I'm getting older and older. But yeah, I played soccer here at the University of Portland with my twin sister, Megan Rapinoe, and then left for a few years, played abroad. And then I came back fall of 2013 and never left.
Portland's home then.
I love Portland. I love the Pacific Northwest. I'm from California originally, grew up in Northern, lived in Southern for a little bit, but I don't know. I think I'm officially an Oregonian now.
So you say you grew up in Northern California. What did you grow up doing sports wise? Was it always soccer, or was it something else?
Honestly, it was everything. My sister and I were total sport junkies. We grew up in the country on like 5 acres. And so we had, we played basketball, we played football, we played soccer. We actually played roller hockey for a while, anything that we could do to just like release some energy and also compete with one another, because we had that built-in 1v1 competition every single day. We did. But I would say our loves were basketball and soccer, but we ran track for like junior high and then through high school. And then we also swam competitively, which we hated actually growing up, but my mom made us do it for cross training. And now I'm so thankful that she made us swim and that I know how to swim properly.
I will say swimming is probably the hardest thing, to get used to. Was there the cross training? What aspect are you happy about having now? Is there something that you've benefited from?
Well, I just think it's really empowering, first of all, to to be comfortable in the water. Because
Mm.
we grew up around lakes and rivers. We had two big, beautiful lakes around Reading. But obviously I'm comfortable in the ocean. So I think just in general, it's really empowering to be comfortable with water, and I love the water. And then, yeah, like I've just had so many injuries, and coming back during the rehabilitation process, obviously you can't run when you're recovering from an ACL injury or an ankle surgery. So swimming was just such a great alternative. And, I'd be lying if I said I swim regularly now. Getting to the pool here in Portland is kind of tough, but I enjoy it, and it's a great workout.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can definitely tell when you've swam at the end of the day and you sleep. It's like the best sleep ever when you really swim. So, you mentioned your sister. Y'all are twins, of course. I mean, was it like this micro, you know how when two species intermingle and it's in like a prey and predator and they just co-evolve in a little environment, and it's ridiculous when you see it? Is that like what it was for you and your sister? You just constantly trying to get better than one another. Then when you get out into the world, it's like, holy crap, we're so much better than other people at this thing together.
Yeah, no, it was insane, Mason. Like we would literally play the craziest games of like 1v1 basketball. We would play flag football on the street. I mean, it was like bloodied. We were bruised. We have stories of us because we were also really avid ping pong players, and we had a ping pong table in the garage in high school. And I always beat Megan. It actually got to the point where like I'd play left-handed sometimes, which would obviously piss her off even more. But there are so many stories of one of us getting just so pissed during a ping pong match that we would slam the paddle on the table and break the paddle. Like we broke so many paddles just by slamming it against things out of frustration.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was intense.
Do you think you'd have, the level of sports, ability if you guys didn't have that consistent competitiveness literally 24/7?
I don't think so. I mean, I think part of, when you play Division I soccer, when you go on to play in the pros and then obviously go on to be an athlete like Megan, I mean, you're talking about like less than 0.0001% of the population. So there's just a certain level of genetically gifted talent that you have to have. But aside from the talent, I think that what made Megan and I, part of our greatness was that we were so comfortable being just tenaciously competitive and brutally honest with each other during competition that it just like it drove us. We also have so many stories of our teammates just getting so uncomfortable sometimes at practice or in the middle of a game because Megan and I would be so mad at each other because if I felt like she wasn't trying hard enough, or if she was pissed at me for giving away that ball or missing that free throw or, tackling that play or whatever, like we would just be brutally honest. And you just can't do that with at least for females, that's not typical. I know that men tend to be a little bit more honest with each other and kind of like just leave it all out there, but women don't do that as much. So I think that was pretty defining and character building for Meg and I to just like be able to just yell and scream at each other,
Yeah, that's definitely a unique relationship, almost like when the coach has a son or daughter on the team. It's just a different aspect to it, and for better or worse for you guys, obviously it worked. I actually have two twin brothers that are a year younger than me, and they have not put that ability to use as well as you and Megan have. They really just fight all the time. That's all they ever did. So I was like, dang it, if they would have channeled it into something positive like this, maybe they'd be professional athletes too. But
yeah. I mean, and that's what it was. Megan and I, we were gifted. Obviously, we had some natural talent, and then we just truly love sports.
Oh man,
like through and through.
And so, at some point, the soccer began to kind of emerge. Then then ping pong and basketball and all that. What kind of led to that? Was it just was it just kind of what you felt naturally gifted at, or did it make the most sense at some point?
Well, to be honest, Mason, I would say, a lot of through high school, basketball was our first love. Like we played soccer competitively down in Sacramento, which was like about a 2.5 hour drive. And, we really enjoyed it, but at times it felt like it was kind of a grind, and basketball really became an outlet for us. And we were just so passionate about it. We were huge Michael Jordan fans, Chicago Bull fans. Whereas at the time, we didn't have a lot of soccer players to look up to. The 99 World Cup was incredible, but then after that, like the WUSA, the WUSA League had folded, and there just weren't like a lot of female soccer players or even male soccer players at the time that Meg and I really like admired. So basketball was just on TV all the time. It was our first love. But what happened is we stopped growing. And so, I'm 5'4" and Megan's 5'6", and, we were having basically every D1 college under the sun for soccer, writing us letters and wanting to chat with us or offering us scholarships. And then on the basketball side, it was like D2 at best, D3 mostly, or like NAIA. So when you're looking at these schools, it's like, okay, which school am I going to choose? What path am I going to choose that's going to set me up for success in the long run? And that it became clear sophomore, junior year that it was going to be soccer.
And you ended up going to the University of Portland together. Was that a hard decision, or did that just seem to come naturally?
No, it was not natural. I mean, I actually wanted to go East Coast. I wanted something totally different. I'm a little bit more like adventurous, I would say, than Meg, and like just willing to kind of put myself in a situation where I don't really know if it's going to work out. I kind of have a little bit more of that approach to life. And I think, I just wanted to get out of California. I wanted something totally different. And to be honest, I was willing to not go to school with Megan. I think I kind of wanted to just like do my own thing, but Meg was still pretty reserved and shy at the time, and she wanted to stay West Coast. So we eventually, I think our junior year, we told the coaches that we're kind of a package deal and that we were going to go together and we were going to stay on the West Coast. So, our top schools were like Stanford, UCLA, Santa Clara, and Portland. And we went to the University of Portland to do our official visit. And we knew right away that this was going to be our home. We loved it. We loved the air up here. It's so crisp, beautiful. We love the city. I love that it was out of California. So it was a pretty easy choice, actually, once we actually visited UP.
At some point you started, dealing with, unfortunately, injuries. Could you talk about just as an athlete and as a lifelong athlete and highly competitive with your sister, what started going through your mind? What was some of the process of dealing with that? Were you hopeful? Was it pretty serious right up from the get-go? You know what I'm saying? Like what began to change for you personally?
Unfortunately, when I came to the University of Portland and started playing college soccer, it was kind of the beginning of my physical demise. I think up until that point, Meg and I had never just done one sport. We had done, soccer and then basketball and then track and then swimming. And, so we were kind of playing all these different sports. And I think that's the way Meg and I just like to do life. Like we're both not someone that wants to just do one thing and do it all the time. Like we like doing things in moderation, and we like, having a variety of different exercises or activities. So that was really tough for us and for me in particular. And then obviously, I'm away from mama's home cooking. I wasn't eating right, staying up way too late. And, as every freshman does, but I became like very sick. I was like severely anemic, and we didn't know for about a year. So it was like with the anemia, and then I finally, got better from that. And then was kind of having a breakout year my junior year. And then I tore my ACL, and then recovered from that 4 games into the next year, tore my ACL again. So I just was never able to play like a full season. Meg and I played a half a season together in our entire 4-year stint because she had 2 ACLs, I had 2 ACLs, I had anemia. Yeah, it just wasn't for me. I think I just, I realized kind of through college and after college that I like doing multiple disciplines. I don't really like doing just like one thing all the time,
Yeah. Well, was that hard to accept, not the end of your athletic career necessarily, but just the end of it at that level?
Yeah, it kind of was. I was definitely a very talented player. I am like gifted athletically. And I think the hardest part was like I felt like I just never was able to reach my full potential because my body just physically couldn't do it. I just couldn't train at that level for that long. But I was just, I am and was naturally gifted. So I think that was the hardest part, I think, is just never really feeling like I was able to reach my potential.
So what was something that maybe gave you some inspiration or gave you some peace, or what did you start getting into at that point? Just because I know a lot of athletes out there are facing this, either as young as you did or later on. I know personally for me, I've had a few injuries, and it can be very hard to accept and hard to find out really who you are, kind of build your identity around something else.
Yeah. Well, I think it was two things. When I was realizing in college, my junior, senior year, that like I probably wasn't going to have a strong career after college in soccer, I really dove in. And I'd always been academic, but like I really dove into science. I didn't know that I loved science until I went to college, and I just fell in love with biology. I, got my BS and I have my MS in health and exercise now. And that really spawned my love for academics as well as just like sports science, and just health and wellness. Like when you go through that many injuries, you really you learn your body in a totally different way. So I became very present with my body, very intentional with my body. And then post college, when I graduated, I was able to just like do all the things that I was never able to do when I was playing, like cycling and swimming and, snowboarding and just distance running. Like I started doing Olympic triathlons in Reading. I did that for a couple of years. And the training for that was really challenging, but really tough. And again, you're doing 3 different disciplines, which gave my body a little bit of a break, from just the constant running and training of soccer. So I fell in love with like working out and exercising in a different way.
Yeah, that's a totally different pace,
Mm-hmm.
I do feel like people at the college age and even, just younger people tend to go for those high intensity, really agile sports. And as you get older, you want to do things more endurance based. It's hard to be that disciplined when you're really young, but the discipline that it
Yeah.
takes to be a triathlete is insane. And so that's really interesting. So those 3 sports, was that easier on your body and your injuries than constant changing of motion and shifting of weight of soccer?
Yeah, I would say that definitely the cycling and the swimming is much easier on my body and on my knees. I've had 4 knee surgeries. I've had an ankle surgery. So, much easier. I don't swim as much anymore. Now, again, it's kind of shifted actually, Mason, back into like more high intensity movements. And part of that is because I don't have the time to be working out for like an hour or 2 a day. So now I kind of have to get a lot of bang for my buck. So I've kind of resorted back to like interval training, high intensity training. I do love strength work, but both body weight as well as like adding some weight on. I just, my joints feel better when I have a little bit more muscle on me. So I've kind of resorted back a little bit to the circuit training and high intensity training. And, it's because you can get a good workout in like 30 minutes as opposed to like an hour, hour and a half, and I just, with the craziness of running Mendi, I don't always have a large chunks of my day to devote to working out, unfortunately.
Oh, totally understandable. I mean, it's it's very easy to get busy today in today's world.
Yeah, I
So,
know.
you said you developed this passion for science, passion. Did you start seeing like just the recovery of athletes as being not ideal, like overall? Like what did you start getting passionate about specifically? Was it helping folks that were kind of facing the same challenges you were, or was it just the understanding of the body in general? What was it for you?
I think it was a mix of everything. It was nutrition, definitely. Young kids and college kids, and even professional athletes, like don't quite understand the concept of fueling your body versus just eating. So, what you're putting in your body is incredibly important. Yeah, preparation. So everything that you're doing outside of just that training session is going to affect that training session. So, pre-activation, your warm up, your cool down, like what are the things that you're doing outside of that competition or that practice that could just be a little bit better? And then, yeah, recovery is just so important. And I think definitely more athletes nowadays are paying attention to it, and it's being incorporated into their training regimen, which is great. Because the reality is like most athletes are receiving pretty good training, like and no one's taking 2 months off anymore. If you're a professional athlete, you're staying fit all year round. So then it becomes, how well are you recovered for your next bout of exercise? And that's really like where I started to kind of geek out, and then why Mendi was spawned, really.
Yeah. So, here at Athletic Bruin, one of the biggest aspects of why we're doing what we're doing is for recovery. Like, obviously, alcohol is not good for recovery, but
Mm-hmm.
you might have a party to go to, or you might have somewhere to go to where there's alcohol, and you want to have fun and you want to enjoy the social aspect. And so we are giving you that beer without the effect of alcohol, which obviously affects your sleep, affects muscle recovery, so many different things. And so I know with Mendi, like your motto or slogan, whatever you want to call it, is recover better. Can you talk a little bit about Mendi, what it is, and why you decided to start it?
Well, yeah, I mean, our mission through and through is to improve athletes' lives using nature's best tools. So, nature being the key word there. We see and have seen time and time again these athletes being prescribed pills or taking over the counter meds or taking Ambien to help sleep. There's all these synthetic pills out there that mask things, but they don't actually get to the root of the problem, and they don't help. They don't help your anatomical systems, or they don't help your endocannabinoid system. They're like beta blockers, right? So we we advocate obviously for cannabis, but also just for whole plants. Plants are incredible. Cannabis has an incredible ability to feed your endocannabinoid system and keep you at balance, and it's a wonderful pain reliever, anti-inflammatory, and it helps with neural balance, and all of these great things that a pill like Ambien is trying to help with, or Vicodin, or ibuprofen, or Advil. I mean, there's just, Americans take so many pills every day that don't actually help them. And so that's the message that we are trying to convey with our products. And then particularly with athletes, like, we think there's just a better way to take care of our athletes. We love and revere sports so much in this country, but yet we allow a lot of terrible things to happen with our athletes. And we kind of just are standing up against that.
That's a great way to put it. It is a balance between, we love these athletes, let's make sure we can protect these abilities that we love watching. Because what good is it if all our best athletes are ruining their bodies, or just hitting each other too hard? Football, immediately comes to mind with helmets and concussions and all that, and that whole debate. And
yeah,
and that's a great point. And now, I read this somewhere as well, and maybe we don't talk about this. I heard that in your life personally, growing up with your sister in Reading, drug use was prevalent in your area, and you saw kind of the devastation of it, of substances in people around you. Would you say that's part of the inspiration behind this?
very much so. And if you read a little bit deeper, which you may have, I mean, I have a brother who's a heroin addict, and he still is, and he's been in and out of prison since I can remember. And I wouldn't necessarily say that it was the opiate pills that took his life. I mean, I think he was already kind of on that path, and he was already kind of like, dabbling into other drugs, but he definitely became addicted to heroin. He definitely took pills. So I guess the pills didn't help, I guess. And the access to them was pretty easy. But yeah, I mean, that is a huge reason. And I would even argue to say that, because again, I've had 4 knee surgeries, I've had an ankle surgery. I have taken so many opiates, and at a young age, like you're talking 20, 21 years old, taking opiates for a straight month, like
Wow.
after a few days, you start to become dependent on them. Your brain becomes chemically altered like that quickly. And I really think that if it was not for already having a brother who is addicted to drugs, I probably would have misused those drugs and kind of succumbed to the addiction, because I definitely went through a withdrawal process. My body was physically addicted to them, but just mentally, I just couldn't let myself, become addicted. And it was probably because I just seen what it did to my brother and to our family, and just the devastation that it has, but not everyone has that story. Not everyone has firsthand access to what addiction can do to someone's life. And if you don't, then like how easy it is to become addicted to those pills.
Absolutely. That's, I definitely have similar experiences with my family. And anytime there's an option to where, like you said, you're standing up against it through Mendi. And so, did you see that this was also just too easy of an option for athletes? And it's great because it works, obviously, and it's easy, like I said, but there's on the other side, the negative consequences are so great. It's almost like, why would you take that risk?
Right. Well, that's why this has all come to a head, because it is so much easier for an athlete to get a Percocet or a Vicodin pill than it is for them to go smoke a joint. In terms of getting it from their medical staff, and that's the thing is like us as athletes and young kids and even adults, like we look to our medical practitioners as leaders and we look to them for advice, and, their hands are tied because cannabis isn't federally legal. Hemp is, but cannabis isn't. And there aren't enough controlled hemp studies for them to be prescribing hemp derived CBD. So their hands are tied a little bit too. But, we look to these medical practitioners for guidance. And when someone's giving you a Percocet or giving you a Vicodin, instead of telling you to go smoke this joint, like you're going to take that pill, right? So even in today's society with athletes, it is so easy to go get a prescription opiate. Obviously now in a lot of states you can walk into a dispensary, but I'm not hearing a lot of doctors or medical practitioners encourage athletes to go cannabis route versus opiate route. But fortunately now we know the harm that opiates have on us. So I think the prescribing and the handing out is becoming less and less. But, athletes are still in pain, so they still need something.
You got to do something. And so for someone like you who is starting something to help stand up against this status quo, what is some of the reaction that you've seen, some of the feedback about what you're doing, as well as maybe some of the resistance? Because, here at Athletic, we're obviously chasing a crazy idea, non-alcoholic beer. So we definitely align with people like yourself who are also standing up to huge industries.
Yeah, I would say like in terms of athletes and even a lot of medical practitioners, they're open to it. Athletes have been using it for years. The genie's out of the bottle. Like athletes use cannabis for sure. They just can't talk about it as freely as they probably would like to. But they love the product. Of course, there's that stigma of testing positive for THC. So there's just a lot of like education to do. I would say, of course, the pushback is from the leagues. These are the decision makers. And until they lift the cannabis bans or even just the CBD bans, that is going to be our constant wall of confrontation. I think what's going to help with that is education, and just for the market to mature in general, there needs to be more education. There needs to be less restrictions in the industry. The FDA needs to come out with rules and regulations around hemp derived products so we know how to talk about it, because right now it's just kind of a free for all. We know we can't say it diagnoses anything or it treats anything. We know that. But what can we talk about it? Because ultimately, like, our job is to protect the public, right? And we want to make sure that we're guiding people towards purchasing the best products for their bodies. But if we don't even know what we can and can't say about the products, then we're not really helping our consumers all that much, in terms of education. So yeah, like anything, knowledge is power.
Absolutely. Now, what has been your experience kind of leading this charge as a business owner and a business leader? You know what I'm saying? Like, is it similar to experience of the grind of sport? A lot of athletes will maybe one day start a business, and the two can be so similar in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, this is my second business. So, while I have experience working in the cannabis industry is unlike any other industry. It really is so restricted. People can hardly even bank. You can't get credit. Like, all of our credit is on my personal line. So it's hard to raise money. It definitely it's tough to navigate. I think for us being a sports brand, there's good and bad. Of course, not every league is allowing CBD. So we're having to work around those hurdles, and we're having to just be patient, because it's a matter of time before every league allows it. But for now, we have to work around those hurdles. But the good news is that athletes love it. They're using it anyway, and they really have been looking for a trusted sports brand. And so we've really been welcomed by the athletic community. Because there just hasn't been a brand that's like won the trust of athletes, and we're doing that now. So I think, we had an opportunity to kind of own this niche, and we're doing it, and that's great. But, it's all within like the understanding that we're still in a very restricted industry, and we are just kind of like at the mercy of our government. And I hope that the FDA and I hope our federal government, I hope they can, continue to like take the steps in the right direction, which is to lift the bans and to allow us to operate like every other industry.
Best case scenario, kind of what you daydream about. What do you hope to see in the next 5 to 10 years in athletic recovery?
So I'll answer it twofold. First one, just in terms of like government, I hope that the FDA comes out with some rules and regulations soon. That way everyone is operating in the space with like the same understanding and the same rules, so it's not confusing for consumers. The second thing is I really hope THC becomes federally legal, and with that, the Safe Banking Act passes, so companies who are making millions and millions of dollars are actually able to put their money in a bank where it's safe instead of like hiding it in God knows where. Right. On the sports side, of course, I want these bans to be lifted. And I think that there does need to be more controlled studies done, which are being done right now, which is amazing because we do need more data, right? Like we don't have a lot of data on dosage. There's enough data to know that CBD, at least in itself, is not harmful and you can't overdose from it, but it's still important to know numbers, right? So then we can effectively tell consumers. So once there's more data derived from these studies, I think that it's important that these leagues, lift the bans. Like we know it's not going to hurt athletes like Vicodin has been and like Ambien can. So why is that allowed there, but cannabis isn't? I mean, that really, there's no logic to not allow cannabis in sports. I just don't understand that logic anyway. Because if you're saying that cannabis is the gateway drug to bigger and worse things, well, you already are allowing Percocet. You already are allowing all these prescription opiates. What's worse than that?
Sometimes logic doesn't seem to apply.
Yeah, I know. So that's what I hope. I hope the bans lift. I want it to become federally legal, both on the THC side and CBD, and then, for companies to be able to safely put their money in a bank.
And you sound incredibly passionate about this.
I know I am. I'm sorry if I get a little out of control so much.
Hey, you gotta be. No, it's fine. But I think we're getting close to the end. I would love to wrap up with a few. We asked around 5 or 6 rapid fire questions.
Oh yeah, sounds great.
Perfect.
Fire away.
Awesome. All right, rapid fire number 1. What has been your favorite, I would say, success in your career? This could either be sport or business.
Ooh, well, I would say winning a national championship is pretty amazing. And that team actually got inducted into the NCAA Hall of Fame. So that's great. Getting a master's was definitely something on the bucket list. And then I would honestly say founding Mendi has been the highlight of my career thus far.
Wow. That's some incredible stuff. And so, yeah, I didn't mention that. I definitely knew that you guys won a championship. I didn't know you were inducted to the NCAA Hall of Fame. That's incredible. Something super to be proud of.
Yeah.
So what would you say you're most curious about right now outside of, what you do for work?
Ooh, I love cooking. That I would say that's probably the way that I express myself. If you want to compare it to art. Yeah, I love cooking. It's truly, even when I work out, I'm still kind of like thinking of other things, but I would say cooking is the only place where I truly am like in that moment and I'm not thinking about anything else. I think that's why I love it so much. For some reason, I'm just able to like completely be present, which I really struggle with anyway. So, always looking for new recipes, new marinades, new ways to, heat or grill meat. I'm definitely not a vegan, by the way. I eat meat. But yeah, cooking is my outlet for sure.
That's totally understandable. It's definitely grown on me in the last few years too. It is very meditative, and when you're done, you've got this wonderful thing to eat. That's the most incredible part to me about it. It's very fulfilling.
Yeah, meditative is a good word. It's mindful because again, you're like present.
Yes, you have to be, you know what I mean? Or you're going to burn something and your fire alarm goes off. You know what I mean? You do have to be present. That's a great, I didn't think about that, but that's got to be one of the reasons as well. So you might have already answered this through that, but do you have a hobby that you do that maybe you don't talk about a lot or post about a lot?
Ooh, I would say, I mean, movement is something that I just love. Whether I'm working out, I mean, I'm infamously known for just like dropping into a hamstring stretch, like kind of in the middle of a conversation. I love stretching. I love moving my body. I would say, yoga. I do my own version of yoga. Like I don't go to yoga classes often, but yeah, I would say just like stretching and moving and just kind of like opening up my body is something that I'm very well known for, either good or bad.
Last interview I did, I asked, what's your favorite hobby? And he said emails. So that wasn't that exciting.
Oh,
so
gosh.
yoga's
No.
better.
No, definitely not. When
Definitely
I'm done
not
with work,
emails.
I'm done. I leave my computer in my office. I mean, if I have to be on my phone a little bit, I will, but I definitely try to be done when I'm done.
Good for you, because it's hard to do. That can be hard to do. So what would you say is your biggest goal that you haven't yet achieved?
Well, am I allowed to just be honest?
That's the goal.
I mean, I want to be, the next female CEO of a $1 billion company. Yeah, I kind of fumbled through that, but I want to be the next female CEO of a $1 billion company. I think that's pretty badass. I think, definitely being a gay woman, coming from the background that I came from, I definitely had a wonderful life growing up, and there are people who had much more hardships than me, but, I came up from humble beginnings, and I do a lot of my motivation derives from my family. And, I just think I think it's incredibly important for representation and, having a female leader, having especially of a $1 billion company, someone who's gay. Like there are just so many things that are to be celebrated about that. And I would love to do that.
That is quite a goal. And in the pursuit of that goal, it is going to take, doing what we talk about every day, which is living, breathing, working without compromise. So to wrap this up, what does it mean to you to live without compromise?
It means to be in balance. I think that if you want to be successful, you have to be prepared to work hard and you have to be prepared to sacrifice, but you don't have to let it consume you, and you don't have to be imbalanced. I also infamously have been known throughout my life to never compromising balance in my life, to the point where people just, probably thought I was crazy and I was giving up these other things because I knew that it was going to take too much emotional energy or whatever. I think balance is very important, and that I will never compromise in my life.
Wow. Great words of wisdom, Rachael. There's a lot folks can learn from you. And yeah, those are some great answers. So I really appreciate you being on and talking about just your story and what you're doing and what you're passionate about.
Of course. Well, I appreciate you letting me on your show. And it was wonderful to meet you, Mason. And have a wonderful weekend. It was great to connect. And hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Yes, sounds good. All
sounds
right,
good.
Soon.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye. First of all, thank you so much for listening. It means the world to us that you choose to listen to this show. If you'd like to help us further, you can leave a review on iTunes, share us with your friends, your family. It goes a long way to growing the show. You can also support us financially through patreon.com/Adventure Sports Podcast. Link is in the show notes. And also, if you have an idea of who could be a good guest for the show, we're always looking for people to tell their story about the outdoors or adventure. So if you know someone, please reach out. Email us at info@adventuresportspodcast.com. And until then, get out there and have some fun.